So I'm Lem Moyé, and I'm 71 years old, and I am living in Chandler, Arizona with my wife. Um, you asked about a challenging moment. It must be when I was diagnosed with metastatic colon cancer in March 2021. My wife and I didn't anticipate it. Were Stunned is not the right word. We were almost transported to another dimension as we had to begin to manage this new emotional life, as well as all of the tactical considerations that are involved in treatment for cancer. And we are still groping with this. Unfortunately, my diagnosis and treatment drive our day-to-day schedule. We still have the opportunity to spend time together. We still have the opportunity to go out. But every day is different now in a way that sometimes we can't anticipate. And while I think everyone understands that there would be intense time for these physician visits, let me try to illustrate for you what that means for us. This is a very short story about two boys at the top of a wooden pen, and inside the pen was a mean, angry hog. This hog was big, it was ferocious, and really looks to do damage. And so the boys are throwing sticks at it, they're laughing at it, throwing stones at it, and one of the boys falls into the pen. The hog sees it at once and grabs the boy's buttocks with its teeth. And the boy yelps in pain, and with nothing else to be able to grab onto, the boy grabs onto the hog's tail. And they go round and round. The hog is trying to gnaw deeper into the boy's flank, and the boy is holding on to the tail. And when the boy gets tired, the hog grabs a little bit more of his flesh, and he yelps and he tries to pull back on the hog, and here they go. And the other boy at the top of the pen is absolutely in shock and doesn't know what to do. And the boy in the pen, with the hog attached to him, calls out, "Come here quick, come here quick, and help me let this hog go." That's what my wife and I have been trying to do. We're trying to let the hog of cancer go, and it's a tough animal. So I retired from the University of Texas School of Public Health in Houston in 2019 after having been there for over 30 years. We worked on many different projects, and we had teaching responsibilities, and these gradually increased during my career to the point where I felt that it was impossible to get anything done because we as faculty were so interrupt driven. You're working on a project and you get an important phone call, or you're working on a paper and you get emails that you need to respond to. And it became intolerable. So the one thing I absolutely do not miss is the inability to control your own agenda at the university level. And I so enjoy being able to work on a project here until I am, whether it's financial or whether it's mathematics or whether it's writing, and be able to work on it until I decide to stop and then move on to something else. It's about being in control. There are only three things I wanted to do in my life, and that was read, think, and write. And I accepted an academic job and believing, quite rightly, that in fact I could do those things in academia. Well, I couldn't do them as much as I wanted to because of the administrative overlay, but no job is perfect. However, writing manuscripts for journals is challenging in that you don't have very many words to express your point of view. And it's considered to be a sign of maturity to be able to write a manuscript of 1,500 words to describe a new content, a new field, a new substance matter, a new substantive matter. And I think while it's possible that people can do it, it's next to impossible for people to understand what you're talking about, especially if you're new in the field. And so I began to move my emphasis more to writing technical books in mathematics and statistics. And I loved it because I could be completely expository. I could go for as many pages as I wanted, give as many examples as I wanted, to make it as easy as possible for the reader to understand what it is you're saying. The worst experience I could ever have is a reader looks at what I wrote and said, I have no idea what you're talking about, Lem. So to be able to make it expansive and invite the reader into this new knowledge base and walk with them as they get their feet on the ground is something I've come to enjoy very much. So I began to play with the idea of writing fiction 20 years ago. My wife and I had gone on our 20th wedding anniversary to Hawaii, the Big Island, and I thought, well, I'm attracted to the concept of writing fiction. And it's because writing math, no matter how attractive you make it, in the end is math. And people can react badly to that. If we can get people to understand math through fiction, then that's a whole new avenue of education. So I began to write in 2004 about, I wrote a short story, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had no training in writing fiction. I just wrote the short story and just enjoyed it. And so that led me to write my very first fiction work, which is Saving Grace. I believe I have a talent in writing, and I think I have an obligation to share that talent. Now, I want to put the very best product I know how to produce out there, recognizing that as my skills improve, the product improves, and it's an easier and more enjoyable read for the audience. But I have ideas that I thought were fresh ideas that really had not been written before. And I wanted to get these ideas out there so that people at least have the opportunity to learn about what's going on. Well, I was quite pleased and surprised. You can't be a writer without being inured to negative reviews. You get used to that all the time. Sometimes the negative reviews are worthwhile to study, and sometimes they're not. But at some point, it can feel like you're never going to get recognized for what you've done, but you believe you have the talent, and you believe you have an obligation to continue to use that talent and to improve and hone it, period. The Katrina book, I was very pleased to get an award for. because that was a book unlike any other book written about the Katrina experience, where it describes what the survivors were like as a people, as a culture. So that was very edifying. The Catching Cold book, I really went out on a limb because I wrote a 3-volume set and all about science and all about complicated science. And I worked hard to reduce the level, the introductory level, to make it easier for the audience to get the point of what I was presenting, and to win an award was very gratifying. Madam President 2024 is about the difficulty a vice president has in succeeding to the presidency from the vice presidency. We as Americans take this movement for granted, but there have been historically, for centuries now, groups of individuals who wanted to disrupt the process. This is an example where an American vice president is ready to move to the presidency after the current president has a stroke and is unresponsive, and she is blocked because she cannot satisfy the requirements of the 25th Amendment. In the meantime, the Russians take the opportunity to launch a major tank attack against northern Kiev. As vice president, she has no authority to initiate military action. So the question is, in the end, what does she do? Does she initiate military action, or does she allow Kiev to be conquered while she's trying to get the vote she needs to satisfy the 25th Amendment? Since I was a teenager, I've always been interested in political science. I was never interested in choosing it as a career because I wanted to follow the science math track. But I was always interested in the interaction between people as they vie for powerful positions. So I started by reading Theodore H. White's The Making of the President series from 1956 through 1980, I think. And I've read many other books about current politics, and not so much the screeds that are written today about flailing one position and exalting another, but just about how individuals react in high-pressure situations and how some succeed and some fail in advancing. My focus was chosen because, number one, that is who our current vice president is. And number two, the American people know little about vice presidents. In fact, it is very difficult to know how a vice president is going to act as president. Some vice presidents do a terrible job as president. Other vice presidents do a superb job, and it's just impossible to know. So I wanted to put the brake on the idea that somebody can look at a Vice President Pence or Vice President Quayle or Vice President Harris and say, because they did this as vice president, they're not going to be a very good president. Well, I started the book in May and finished the book in November. So that's about, 5, 6 months. It is written to relate to our current time. Because in our current time, we see what's happening politically as something new, something profound, something dangerous. And one of the points of my book is that these types of maneuvers and shenanigans with the electoral process have been going on for hundreds of years. That's no excuse, but that is who we are as a people. I mean, I don't think anybody in the audience knows that Alexander Hamilton, the exalted Alexander Hamilton, in our first election, tried to take electoral votes from John Adams because he didn't want John Adams to be a force in the Federalist Party. So it is current to remind us who we are, so we're not surprised by what happens, and maybe can begin to take some steps to ensure that it doesn't happen in the future. Certainly the office does. It could be used for nothing, or it could be used for good or for harm. It's inhabited by individuals. Now, the individuals have a choice. Do they want to use the office to its full capability, maybe rub some shoulders the wrong way, but begin to get some good things done? Or do they want to be sinecures, just sitting in the background, not doing anything? You can't blame vice presidents for wanting to do that. Nobody runs for the office of vice president. And taking somebody with the energy and the drive and the innovation and motivation to be president and putting them in the vice president slot, it's like taking somebody who's 6'2" and putting them in a cage that only holds somebody as tall as 5'5". They're uncomfortable. They can never get anything done. So it's really up to the vice president to decide how they want to manage it. And there are wonderful examples of vice presidents who have served very effectively as a vice president in the office. Well, let's get beyond the usual tripe that a novel should be a positive emotional experience. I want this novel to grab the reader by the lapels and let them feel in their own hearts and minds the tension that is involved as the vice president struggles between what her demands are for the Constitution and what demands are made of her by the important military situation. And what I want Americans to take from this when they're done is a new desire to read, a new desire to understand these issues. Most people, if you ask them who John Adams was, they'll tell you that John Adams makes beer. I mean, we have such a low regard for our own history. And the way to reverse that is to get engaged and to read. So the cancer is just one more life obstacle. I, like many people in the audience, have had multiple life obstacles. What inspired me to overcome them was my father, who didn't mind failure, but he hated the notion that either my brother or I didn't do our best. So his idea that he imprinted on us was that we choose a target, be it a career field, be it a project, and we do the very best we know how to do with it, and we put it forth as our very best. And that obstacles are nothing but challenges that test our fortitude. My future is limited because my mortality is much closer than I anticipated. So I don't think I'll be able to write any other books. But I would say to aspiring writers, there is much information out there about how to write. There are many books about how to write novels. The web is overwhelming with information about writing novels. My advice is to ignore it all. Sit down at your computer, at your tablet, with your legal pad, and simply write. Write to your heart's content. There will be time for you to go back through and edit and re-edit and worry about trying to balance narrative with dialogue and trying to make sure that you produce positive emotional responses to people. There's time for that. But the first thing you have to do is you have to sit down and you have to write. And as far as I'm concerned, once you've done that and you've put that pen down or you've pushed back from the keyboard, you're an author.